U.S. prosecutors overplayed appeals to jurors' emotions and failed to prove that Ahmed Abu Khattala conspired to kill a U.S. ambassador and 3 other Americans in the 2012 attacks on U.S. facilities in Libya, according to a juror who convicted the militia leader last week on terrorism charges but not murder in the deaths in Benghazi. The juror, a man who discussed deliberations after being contacted by the Post, said in an interview that the panel of 12 had doubts early on about some of the testimony from 3 Libyan informants who testified under pseudonyms that they saw or heard Abu Khattala take steps to plan, execute, and claim responsibility for the attacks. Over 5 days, jurors painstakingly pieced together a timeline of events, the juror said, trying to establish for themselves when Abu Khattala joined a plot by several militant groups that overran and burned a U.S. special diplomatic mission on the night of September 11, 2012 and fired mortars on a nearby CIA base before dawn. September 12 accused Benghazi ringleader convicted of terrorism charges in 2012 attacks that killed U.S. ambassador. We felt that the prosecution spent a lot of time on emotional appeals that kind of fell flat to us, when we already knew the gravity of the case, according to the juror who spoke on condition he not be named because of worries about his safety. But we were a little shocked that they didn't kind of set up the timeline of events as much for us, he said, including the whereabouts of the actual defendant. Abu Khattala, 46, who led an extremist Islamist brigade and was captured by U.S. commandos and brought to trial in Washington, was convicted on 4 of 18 counts, including conspiracy and providing material support to terrorism, malicious destruction of property endangering others, and using an AK-47 semi-automatic weapon in a crime of violence. Jurors took with a grain of salt much of what the Libyan witnesses said. Each were paid at least $200,000 in expenses and as much as $7 million by the U.S. government for their cooperation, because we were aware that they did not necessarily have a great relationship with the defendant, or were actively working against him, the juror said. The 3 witnesses testified about what they said was Abu Khattala's planning and intent, including that he asked one for armed vehicles to carry out the attacks, stockpiled weapons and kept mortar rounds and a shoulder-launched missile in his garage, and said in 2014, as he was being urged to take on bloodier operations, that he previously had intended then to kill everybody, all the Americans there at the Benghazi sites. The identities of the jurors have not been made public by the court, and U.S. District Judge Christopher R. Cooper told potential jurors their answers in an unusually detailed, 28-page questionnaire used for jury selection, including biographical data, would not be released for security and privacy reasons. The Post identified several jurors through statements made in open court during jury selection. The panel included 2 lawyers, an English professor, an epidemiologist, a manager of a nonprofit landscape design group, a stamp designer, and a preschool teacher, among others.